guys? I'm back with another episode of the Mom is in Control podcast. So today I wanted to talk about the amazing, magical Stephen Hawking. This man, if you are not familiar, was a force to be reckoned with, a man in a wheelchair. And Tony Robbins talks about him on his Instagram account, and I'm going to read this to you. And then I'm going to talk to you about why I think this is important and what this man exuded into the world from physically not being able to move. So Tony Robbins says, I always say the only limit to your impact is your imagination and commitment. Stephen Hawking wasn't always confined to a wheelchair with no voice of his own. Until he was 21, he lived the same life as so many of us do. Then, in his final year at Oxford, his coordination started to deteriorate. He got clumsy. His speech started to slur. At the age of 21, Stephen Hawking was diagnosed with ALS, a degenerative disease where the neurons that communicate between your muscles and your brain stopped working. There is no cure. This disease only gets worse, taking everything away from you. He was also only given 2 years to live. This was over 55 years ago. Despite this terrible, unforgiving disease, Stephen went on to have an extraordinary career in math and physics, all while ALS continued to take away his abilities to move and even speak. It got worse. He came down with pneumonia, and doctors urged his wife to take him off life support. She refused, and they performed a tracheotomy, completely removing his ability to speak. At this point, Stephen Hawking had so many reasons to give up, and most people in his position would have. They'd complain about how unfair life was. They'd accept the story in front of them, but Stephen didn't. He was bound to a wheelchair, only able to speak through a voice synthesizer, and because of his courage, his persistence, and his passion for the universe, Stephen continued to explore the cosmos. What he accomplished is unbelievable, and he did it despite the many barriers standing in his way. No matter your perceived limitations, there's probably someone out there that has it even more. Has the deck stacked against them even more, who are making a bigger impact in the world. Stephen Hawking was a limitless mind in a limited body. Join me in remembering this extraordinary person. May he rest in peace, and hopefully every question he asked of the universe has now been answered. Okay, so I'm going to admit I knew who Stephen Hawking was, but I didn't follow him very closely. And what I find interesting is when people die, that's when we reflect on their brilliance. That's when we celebrate them. That's when we, grieve their loss. And I think as humans, we have a tendency to do that, right? We always appreciate things once they're gone, but when we're here, we don't celebrate them enough. And I think Stephen was definitely celebrated and appreciated, and that's why he became such world renown. But it's interesting because even as I, obviously I'm seeing more about him since his passing a few days ago, I'm curious now because I didn't really follow him and I didn't really know a lot about him. And that's interesting. That just blows my mind. But what I think is being portrayed here is not his work. And, there's that saying out there, it's not what you look like, it's not how you act, it's how you make people feel, right? That's how they will remember you. And it doesn't matter what you do in the world, really. It doesn't matter what you do as for a career, vocation, even if you're it doesn't matter what you do. It's how you make people feel. And of course, sometimes we don't leave people feeling good, and that's okay too. We all have our moments and days, and this isn't about people pleasing. This is about who you are and how you become. And just by Stephen Hawking being himself and showing up in the world and going, screw you, like, okay, my body is deteriorating around me, but I'm choosing to live. I'm choosing to, create. I'm choosing to think. I'm committed to this process. I'm committed to, asking questions and solving problems and moving the needle forward for the next generation and leaving that legacy. And this is something I'm so passionate about. And I wasn't that person, right? Like when I started this journey, it was out of a need and desire and fear, quite frankly. And I see so many women doing this. And so when you start in survival mode, or you have this bigger ache inside of you and you continue to ask questions and continue to pull back the layers and you refuse to give up, right? You refuse and say, screw you, I get pneumonia, I'm on life support. No, we're not pulling the plug. Take his freaking, take his vocal cords out. Like, I can still use my brain. And this is magic. To me, this is magic of how, as a human species, we can survive longer than people's expectations of us. And so, today's podcast, a little philosophical, and, that's okay. But this really reminds me, this man, you probably just heard my dog, he's sleeping next to me and he's exhaling because that's what he does when he's not barking or annoying me. This man, this brilliant mind just kept what I call following the breadcrumbs of, what is it like? What is life? What is universe? And just keep asking those questions. And he kept showing up, and people called him courageous. People called him brave. But to me, it's knowing that, we have this body, we have this brilliant mind, we have this soul. And when your body gives out, and, it could be something simple as like, okay, your knees are bad, or for me, it was a disease manifesting in my body. I still had my mind. And when your mind is going, it's using these other tools of like digging into the soul and your body and all of these magics. So today, I don't really have a message, but today my message for you is to, one, shut up, stop complaining. We do this way too much. It's a disease. It's an addiction. It's an illness. It's disgusting. It's gross. It's yucky. Stop fucking complaining. We complain way too much about what we don't have, or how shitty things are, or, poor me, I have too many kids. Well, you had sex, you decided to do that, or you adopted them, or they came into your life for some reason. You said yes to raising these children. So let's deal with it. Right? Number two, I guess my message for you today is you have a brilliant mind. And I think when we stop complaining and we start focusing on what we do have in our lives, and we focus on our passion and we focus on what we're craving and desiring, this is where the magic happens. This is how we can live beyond our wildest dreams. So that's my message for you today. Shut up, stop complaining, and focus on that beautiful mind of yours. Talk soon.